Well, for heaven's sake, this present time we're moving into, this electric age, is the dawn of much the greatest of all human ages. There's nothing to even remotely resemble the scope of human awareness and human greatness in
there
this
we
time.
are, a value judgment.
Yeah, I'm talking about, this is quantity.
Marshall,
Most people make their judgments in terms of quantity. Now, I'm merely saying quantitatively, this is by far the greatest human age. What further evaluations would you wish to have brought to bear?
Well, I thought when you said greatest, you meant finest. That is, it would be
biggest,
more admirable than Renaissance, Florence, or something.
Do you mean biggest?
Yes, we're 1,000 times greater than the Victorian age.
In size.
In size.
But not in quality.
I don't know.
You don't know.
We may not, you know, there might be some way. I mean, let's say if there is a good Lord, it's possible he might measure these epochs by how a handful of air appeals to him. In other words, he might take a handful of air out of one epoch and say, marvelous air.
Yes.
He might take it out of our air and say, you know, automobile exhaust.
Contrary to what Marshall has so brilliantly suggested in all his writing, I think there are absolute standards in this thing, culture, in art and literature, and that these standards you can measure one age against another, and that we happen to have lived, no great misfortune really, we happen to have lived in what amounts to a Dark Ages.
We're a highly integral civilization, and this is what distresses people who belong to the old specialist, disintegrated one. They can't find a little place for themselves.
Yes, but are you sure, you see, are you absolutely sure that this is the birth struggle of a new civilization?
Oh, yeah.
Are you absolutely sure that it's not just the breakup?
No, the
not just
circuit
the
is new.
breakup. See, that's what I think is perhaps the whole difference between North America and Europe, really, is that you over here do believe that. But you do over here.
You have a bigger stake in the old technology.
Well, no, but we're inclined to think that all these things that you imagine to be of such enormous importance, like, for instance, this thing we're doing now on television, because a lot of people goop at television for hours every day, you're inclined to think that's an enormously important thing. And I just think it's a sort of sign of the kind of vacuity that comes when a civilization breaks. It's like the circuses in Rome. If there'd been a Marshal McLuhan then, you see, Caius Marcius McLuhanibus, he would have written a great book about the circuses, and he'd have said, here's this new civilization coming.
There's no medium.
No, they had no new technology. But Caesar, by the way, educated the Gauls by war. This is the approved Western method of educating backward areas, is warfare. And Alexander the Great did it that way. Napoleon, I was reading a book on the Russian Revolution the other day in which the author was explaining enthusiastically that the great forward thrust in Russian institutions came from the Napoleonic invasions. And then from the Crimean War. What is happening in the Vietnam now is a great educational forward thrust from us on the war front, on the war path.
It's very pleasant to think of it that way.
I think it's a horribly, it's like roast pig. You know what Charles Lamb's theory of roast pig? You like roast pig? Burn your house down.
Burn your house down. Well,
that's how we do it.
Yes, and this is why I'm a bit inclined to agree with you. But I don't think it's done consciously. I think that's just because...
Oh, no, we never do anything consciously.
No.
Would you say that this North American society is basically optimistic still?
Yes,
and
I would.
European is basically pessimistic?
In a very general term, I would. I mean, the thing is that because I think, and here I'm rather sticking my neck out, but I'm going to say this, and Marshall may disagree with me very strongly, but I'm going to say this, that you over here do believe that the environment that men create governs their nature and their lives. And I don't believe in that. I think that this is only a very small part.
We are of 18th century origin, and it was precisely at that time that Rousseau invented the theory that the environment was the great educator.
That's right, and a lot of load of rubbish it was. Absolute rubbish.
However,
which has produced the present chaotic situation.
Nature as a teaching machine is now capable of being programmed by human intention.
Yes, but you see, these, in a way, Marshall, that's only just words, isn't
No.
it? I mean, you program it You mean like men program computers? You mean they put in something and then the computer... But you see, that's a non-creative
But it's like programming lighting levels, sound levels, temperature levels.
Yeah, but is this
Exactly,
a
but
pleasant
that's
idea?
not life.
Is this an idea to be welcomed?
This is, well, whether it's welcomed or not, my great point that I'm trying to make is that is not life, that's a surface thing, you see.
Oh.
And I think that life's about something much more than that.
It's like saying, though, isn't it, that disease is not just a matter of symptoms. On the other hand, if you can get rid of all the symptoms, who cares what disease he has?
Yes, but the fact is, the simple fact is, taking that analogy, is that treating the symptoms does not cure the disease.
No, but getting rid of the
disease
symptoms does.
Wouldn't treat a symptom and get rid of it, you get another.
What do you think about the young people who are in this hippie thing? You're one of their favorite people. Are they among your favorite people?
Well, I can't say that I have given them too much cause for comfort, or I haven't done very much beside just observe what sort of form their behavior seems to indicate is behind their life. And I can see clearly that they're desirous of a very much more rich social life, involvement in social life, and the mere finding of little niches and jobs and so on will not satisfy them.
Aren't they becoming tribalized the way
Yes,
you say the
yes.
whole world is, and they are actually doing it?
Tribal,
and they even
though.
use the word, don't they?
I don't know, but tribal is not a new form exactly. But post-literate tribal is a very different matter from pre-literate tribal. And we're tribalizing simply by virtue of a much closer family, a sense of the human family.
In this part of the world, you are inclined to say, now, as Marshall does, 200 years ago, printing was invented. Then,
500.
500 years ago, printing was invented. Life's never been the same since then.
No, absolutely true.
I don't agree with that. I think that printing or television, all these things, they affect the surface of man. But the fascination of life, to me, is the exact opposite that I find in Socrates and St. Augustine and St. Paul, all those people who lived before printing.
But not before writing.
Or, well, if you like.
By the way, there's a wonderful book by Eric Havelock called Preface to Plato, in which he just mentions in passing that what Socrates' great contribution was to the dialectic was the ability to say, would you mind repeating that, please? The Socratic irony, the Socratic questioning was a playback. With the coming of writing, the possibility of playback came into human society for the first time. Socrates was very much a product of technology, new technology.
Well, I wouldn't dispute that, Marsh. I wouldn't presume to dispute it. But what I would say is that if you, as far as I've been able in a very sort of amateur way, to read and think about the various contributions to knowledge which have been produced at different times, the thing that astonishes me about them is the huge area which is the same, which is constant, and how narrow is the area that belongs to particular environmental changes, whether a civilization is in a very stable or advanced state, or whether it's in a chaotic state. There are two questions that you can ask about life, really. You can ask the question how, and you can ask the question why. Now, I'm passionately interested in the question why, and I'm not much interested in the question how.
What about
But I think you over here are enormously interested in the question how.
Remember the phrase polite society when that came in? This historically meant a society that established its values on the word or the behavior that was capable of inspection, that would bear looking at. And polite society no longer is with us because we no longer live in a visual culture. And so the values of polite society are for the birds. And I'm not free of the nostalgic look back at some of those old values. On the other hand, I can see why they've gone down the drain, and I can see why new ones are forming right under our noses, and I can see why the new ones create such revulsion, total recoil.